Something about being on the boat terrified him.
Yeah.
But I've gone down an alpine roller coaster with him at like 35 miles per hour, and he was fine with that. But like going 9 knots on a pontoon boat was
funny.
Too much.
That's because you're driving it, not the roller coaster.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
Okay.
Although I was equally surprised on that roller coaster that he wasn't scared. Like I was prepared for him to be scared.
I see. Yeah.
Whatever. Fearing the water, I feel like, is kind of healthy. So.
Hello. You are watching the first episode of the Many Worlds Tavern Podcast. I'm Chris. I'm here with Andrew.
I'm Andrew.
Andrew. We are a company that sells coffee for game night, and we're here to talk about coffee and games, believe it or not. And today we're going to talk about our main topic is going to be if we could go back in time and play a game for the first time, what would those be? So we'll have 3 of those, and then we will answer some coffee questions that our viewers have from online. So let's get into it. But first, I want to check in with Andrew. What is new in your life? What have you been doing for Many Worlds? And what fun stuff are you up to?
Yeah, I think the Many Worlds push recently, we're hopefully going to be rolling out our single origin coffee subscription club somewhere in the next couple months, and also trying to get instant coffee offerings rolled out, which typically involves, on my end, involves figuring out how all the packaging is going to work. Yeah, that's my Many Worlds life. Beyond that, it's just juggling a 4-year-old and the rest of life's responsibilities.
Perfect. What have you been playing, watching, reading, eating, drinking?
So I finally convinced myself to start watching Rick and Morty.
Okay.
Which is almost like embarrassing to me that I haven't watched it, because I know enough about it to like know that I would like it, but I also am always hesitant to start watching anything from Adult Swim. Not because of any kind of stigma. I feel like anytime somebody recommends something that's on Adult Swim, I typically could watch a couple episodes and be done.
Mm-hmm.
But have you seen Rick and Morty before?
No, I've never. I think I'm kind of in the same place. Every time I see a clip of it, I can kind of tell that I would enjoy it, but I've never just gone for it.
It's basically Back to the Future, but it's like Many Worlds. They basically explore infinite realities.
Yeah.
And it's very, very funny. And it's very nerdy, which is great. And I love Dan Harmon. I liked Community a lot. And I like how, he did very thematic episodes that were basically like an homage to some form of storytelling or some form of cinematography. And he does that a little bit with Rick and Morty, where they'll do an episode and it's basically an homage to like Mad Max or something. Which is great. But what else was I going to say about the show? It's like there's like a kind of wisdom that the 2 main characters have, which it's kind of like this nihilistic philosophy, which I don't like. I'm not going to call myself a nihilist, but it's just they just basically acknowledge that because they've experienced these infinite realities that to them nothing has a purpose, so all they do is live their life and have fun and go on adventures, and it's kind of like a fun little escape for sure. But yeah, I do wish I had discovered the show a little earlier, but it's still on. It's on 5th season. I think I'm on the 4th season, catching up still. Yeah, very very cool show, and I'm sure anyone listening to this is like, why the hell haven't you watched the show yet, Andrew?
They probably formed their opinions already.
Yeah.
If it's like, yeah, you should have watched it already, or they already have discovered they don't like it. It's probably
Absolutely. Yeah, you're probably right.
Have you been playing D&D or been on a break?
Yeah. The past 2 months have actually been difficult scheduling wise. A number of guys from my home game have been traveling. They went to like they've been doing like fun traveling to like Yellowstone. One of them was in the Redwood Forest in Northern California, Yuma, Arizona. Like they've been all over. And I'm like, I'm just here trying to play D&D. But yeah, I've done a couple little solo things, which is always kind of fun. It's like a different. It's less fun in some ways because I end up playing like characters in addition to NPC. I end up talking to myself a lot.
Yeah.
Which is like the worst part of being a DM is when you have to have one NPC talk to another NPC. But it's fun in other ways because it's streamlined. It's very personal. There's no decision making really involved between other human beings. So it's cool. But yeah, I think we're supposed to play this week again. But yeah, we still try to play something every 2 weeks if possible. That's hard.
Yeah.
Being an adult is hard.
Cool. What have I been doing? For Many Worlds, it's just been sending lots of emails to get the sponsorship opportunities going for some of the content creators that we're working with. We've got a few in the pipeline that'll come out within the next few weeks, so that's exciting. Other than that, been trying to film some video game for board gamers videos on our YouTube. That's been fun. I kind of forgot how many video games are like so similar to certain board games. I've played several deck builders.
I feel like it's becoming more common too because of mobile games. Like it's a
That's true.
very like bite-sized, simple format. Not that every board game translates into something bite-sized, but I feel like a lot of mobile games, it's like the turn-based things, the like deck builders, like
yeah,
stuff that didn't work well for like a $50 console game, like works well for like a $5 mobile thing.
Yeah, and also all the roguelikes or like the run-based stuff definitely feels like similar to a board game, because most board games you kind of set it up and you do your whole arc in the whole sitting. There's obviously exceptions in legacy games and stuff, but the roguelikes really feel like, all right, we're starting from scratch and then we're doing the actions to get stronger or fight stuff, and that's all contained in one run, and it kind of feels like sitting down for a board game session.
I feel like we need to have another podcast just about what is a roguelike.
What is that? Yeah, we've talked about that at length.
As we discovered, it is kind of one of those things that is applied to a lot of games.
Yeah, a lot of it seems like marketing now, but I'm not gonna lie, it's working to me, because if I see that tag, lately I've just been interested. Mostly because I think we've talked about this too, where like when you were a kid, Final Fantasy VII was like so important in that, you know, it's like formative for you, but as an adult, I'm probably not going to sit down and play a Final Fantasy caliber epic game within like a year.
No, that's true. That's fair.
Like a few years to get me through that. So, yeah, the roguelikes, even though it's kind of I'm sure I'm just tricking myself, because I can be like, oh, I'll just do a run and then it'll be 5 runs later. And then it's like I sat down and played Final Fantasy VII for 4 hours. But anyway, it's probably more personal. What else? Watching. There's this Netflix show. It's called. I think it's called What the Pop. That might be wrong. If it is, I'll put a link in the description or something. But it's a documentary series about pop music. And I've only watched a few episodes, but the first episode was about Boyz II Men. And it made me like totally... I kind of forgot about Boyz II Men for no reason. But transporting me back to like when they were popular, I was like, oh wow, these guys are... they really broke a lot of records and barriers, and it's kind of weird that, you know, we're old now, so we know that boy bands exist, but back then it was kind of newer.
The year I graduated high school, our senior song was a Boyz II Men
there
song.
you go.
But I was...
Were you...
I like, it wasn't even that I disliked them. It was like I literally had never heard the song before.
Oh, yeah,
I had heard a couple of their songs on probably on MTV or on the radio, but this particular song, like I had never even heard it before.
Yeah.
So I'm not super familiar, but
sure. But yeah, the documentary is really good. They're on it, like they're getting interviewed in it, and the producers they worked with and journalists from that time and stuff. So I highly recommend checking that out. Reading, eating, drinking. Not much reading right now. Plenty of eating and drinking, but my brother went to Colorado. That's where we grew up, and he brought back some coffee from Boxcar. They're a roastery out there, and it's amazing. That's all.
What was the orange coffee? What they call
it?
I
can't remember the roaster. He also brought this coffee that was, the processing is called Mandarin processed, which
is weird.
It's a very weird coffee. Super interesting. I think they put Mandarin, like orange peel, in with the coffee during the fermentation process.
Roasted, it smelled like a dream. Like I opened up the bag and it was like somebody hit a dreamsicle with the coffee grounds.
Yeah,
but then it didn't quite come across.
It didn't taste as weird. I mean, we've tasted some weird coffees just in our coffee careers.
It tasted pretty normal, for how crazy it smelled.
Yeah. You could tell, but also I was expecting way more based on the smell. So, yeah. Okay, so main topic. Main topic is, if we could go back in time, I'm Rick, you're Morty, and we can play a game.
Based on the show, I'd prefer to be Rick. But
I'm
for
the
Rick. Purpose of this conversation,
I'm Rick,
be Rick, I guess.
And you're Morty. And no, Morty seems, from what I can tell, he seems he seems innocent most of the time. Yeah, poor guy.
Yeah.
He's just trying to be trying to make it work with his uncle. Okay, we're back in time. We can play a game for the first time, like experience it for the first time. I don't know if the time machine analogy really works out, but like most time travel in any media, don't think about it too much. But top 3. I guess I want to start with my third. Number 3 for me is going to be Fog of Love. I don't think you've played Fog of Love. Mm-hmm. Fog of Love is the tagline on the box is like romantic comedy in a box. And it's a role-playing game / board game. And each player, it's a 2-player game usually, but I like playing it 4-player, where it's like 2 people on each side. And you're role-playing a relationship. Like a budding relationship, like brand new, and it's pretty great because the first thing you do is like you come up with your names, you draw cards for your occupation and some traits, and then the other player gets to play a card that states something irresistible about the other player, like what made them fall for them. And there's a very wide range of these traits. So one of them could be the reason I fell in love with you was you were so kind to this person, this random person. And then the other player could play, I fell in love with you because of the mole on your face. And then you just play it out from there. And then you draw cards to essentially you play from a deck that you're faced with different relationship obstacles or even just events. Even simple stuff. From very simple, for example, like you finish dinner, who's picking up the tab? And then each player will vote what they're going to do, and the other player has to guess what the other player will do. But you're also guided by these different personal goals. Anyways, over-explaining it, mostly what happens is the best part is that just like real relationships, they don't always work out. So you can definitely have a fairy tale relationship, or you can have one where somebody cheats on the other person, and the game does a great job. You like hide a card under the board, and that doesn't get revealed to the end, and all this great stuff. But the first time I played it, it was 2-on-2 with another couple, and my now wife, my girlfriend at the time, and yeah, amazing memories. It's so unique, and I don't really like. I'm not clamoring to play that super often anymore, but. Yeah, that's my first pick. That's going to be Fog of Love.
Interesting. That sounds cool. I mean, what would happen if you played it with somebody who wasn't like your significant other?
I actually think it's better without your significant other. Or it's less it's less of a mind there's a minefield aspect.
Could you turn it into an actual first date activity?
I don't think I would recommend it. So because you're supposed
that sounds like content right there.
You're definitely supposed to role play these characters, right? You're creating these characters.
Okay.
But when you're playing with your significant other, if there's some like parallels to the real world, it can get kind of dicey.
Oh.
Because like
if
in the
they
game,
actually have a mole on their face. And
I would probably not play that card if that is the case. But for
They're
example,
very self-conscious about
yeah,
that.
like if there's an event in the game about like in-laws, and you get in a fight with the in-laws in the game, but then you might have a sketchy relationship with your in-laws in real life. That is not that. I mean, it just seeps into. There's just some.
I feel that.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Okay. That's Fog of Love.
Cool. So my number 3. So 2 of mine are video games and not tabletop. But my number 3 is actually it's not. I don't think it's actually a great game.
Okay.
I don't think it's like ever been on the top 100 so and so games of anything. But number 3 for me is Might and Magic 7. Have you ever played a Might and Magic game?
I have. Yeah.
Like an actual Might or like one of the Heroes of Might and Magic? I could see you playing
I
Heroes.
think now that you have clarified, I think it's probably Heroes of Might and Magic.
Yeah, so the Might and Magic series came first, and it was like, I mean, it goes all the way back to the DOS era of computer games on floppy disks, and they were like first-person, party-based, like dungeon crawl RPGs. And then I'm not sure exactly when Heroes of Might and Magic came. I want to say early 90s was like Heroes of Might and Magic, which was the like kind of army versus army / like town building sim. Which I played Heroes of Might and Magic once upon a time also. But Might and Magic 7, I couldn't tell you what it was. But there was something about it, and I tried to replay it. This was a couple years ago, and I realized, it was okay. It was kind of fun for like nostalgia's sake, but I could see like how nobody who didn't nobody would get into it if they didn't have the nostalgia at this point. But it was like one of the first games I ever played where you're actually in first person and you actually walked around a 3D environment. And it was so early in 3D, like all the sprites were 2-dimensional and they literally like turned to face the camera. So if you saw a tree in the distance as you got closer to it, it'd be the same image of the tree as you like that turned towards. So like that's the level of graphics we're talking about. And then so like it's literally like 2D sprites of people walking like at angles. So it's almost like a funny version of like or let's say a not funny version of something like South Park. But there was something about playing a game like that for the first time that was very gripping, like actually being immersed in a computer game that I remember. And I remember not being able to peel myself away from it. I think I discovered Everquest shortly after. And then Everquest was so bad for me. And maybe it's right there with Might Magic 7 because I discovered them right around the same time. But like EverQuest, the problem with EverQuest is online only at a time when we had dial-up internet. And if I played EverQuest, I was hogging the only phone line we had to our house. And so literally it caused like fights. Because I was like, I just wanted to play it all the time. But also people needed to use the phone for just like normal life. It was before cell phones. So I think between those two, like, and it's kind of like this mixed feeling in my head. I don't know which is stronger because I discovered them around the same time, but I would love to go back and experience like that kind of immersion in a game world for the first time.
Is that the first? Had you played any like leveling up role playing type video game before those, or?
I'm trying to remember if that was my first or Pokemon.
Oh yeah,
but I was right around the same time that the first Pokemon games came out, and I remember Pokemon being bad too. That was almost on my list. Other than I feel like the Pokemon games keep getting better, so there's not much that makes me want to go back and experience the first one.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But I definitely remember playing
machine
myself to sleep with Pokemon and then having dreams where the same music loop was like in my dreams.
Yeah.
But I think it was one of those was probably my first real RPG. We had an NES growing up and we had a Sega Genesis, but you know, going back and looking at all of our old carts, like we didn't really have RPGs lying around.
They were not my first games either. And I think the first RPG that I played was Diablo 1. Which probably I played at too young of an age to be playing it, but you know. I think that was one of the first times I remember thinking the inventory was so novel, like the squares of like dragging the stuff from your like hand to your squares of your inventory.
You should have played Might Magic 7.
Well, sounds like. But I was like, wait, what do you mean? It goes. It can only go on your hand. What does that mean? Which is like, you know, the first 10 minutes of the game. But that was probably my first role playing thing.
Yeah, I liked the Diablo games. I played 1, 2, and 3. I don't remember if I played Hellfire or not, but I never loved them. And even Diablo 3, like I really only played because it was a great co-op game to play with my buddy. I don't know that I would have ever played it solo. I did play Grim Dawn though recently, and I really got into that. And I really like the
same thing, right?
The Torchlight games too.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I know Grim Dawn's the same thing for sure. Yeah. But the Torchlight games I loved because they're a little more like the visuals were a little more happy than Diablo, and it's less like dealing with demons and fire and all the time. Yeah, undead things.
Yeah, I think I always hit a wall in those. I get addicted to seeing the numbers go up. And then I beat it, and then in quotes, but then that's like a lot of people. That's like when the game starts.
Yeah.
Then you start running the bosses, and I've never been into that. I feel like if I had a friend or a Sherpa that was like, "Oh yeah, let me show you how we get the real loot," then I probably would be different. But I never had that person, so yeah.
I liked the first Dungeon Siege. Did you ever play that
I
one?
don't think I have.
It was like party-based Diablo.
Okay.
It was the most aptly named game. 'Cause
Descriptive.
You'd be in a dungeon for like 3 to 4 hours. And
Just sieging.
like there's a character that's literally a mule. Like one of your party members is just a donkey or a mule, and like carries stuff for you because you'd be in a dungeon for so long.
Nice.
Yeah, no, like an actual animal that has packs on it.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
But I definitely like those games, but yeah, I've never. Yeah, Diablo, for some reason, I mean, maybe it's just thematically, like, it doesn't appeal to me as much, because I definitely like that style of game.
That's interesting, because you like, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but you like heavier music.
Oh, yeah.
And you like, I feel like you like.
I don't always like it in video games, though.
Yeah.
Prince of Persia 2. The worst Prince of Persia.
Well, I don't know. That's not really. No, I meant like I meant the aesthetic of of like heavy like metal music and yeah.
I don't know. It's funny. There's kind of a separation with me.
Sure.
Like I don't wear like any t-shirts for heavy metal bands. But yeah, there's a separation for me between like appreciating the instrumental capability of a musician versus like actually engaging with the content.
Gotcha.
Now, but there's a lot of heavy metal that's just about freaking like Lord of the Rings and
sure. No, I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying it's interesting because
I definitely
yeah. Cool. Okay. I couldn't tell. Was Everquest your number 2, or you have another number 2?
I think for me, I do have another number 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
EverQuest and Might and Magic. Yeah, it's kind of the
3.
same. Tied for 3. The immersion.
Okay.
Idea.
Cool. I'm gonna move on to number 2. My number 2, is a tabletop game. It's called The Resistance. Have you played The Resistance?
No.
The Resistance is a social deduction game. It's kind of like old folk games like Mafia or Werewolf, where there's like you're assigned a role, and depending on your role, you win or lose in different ways. But most players of the game don't know what roles other people have.
So it's like you're dealt a card, like you're dealt a role at the beginning.
Yeah. And sometimes in some of these games, like in one of the most popular is One Night Ultimate Werewolf. So there's some roles that can like peek at other players' cards before the start of the game to add some intrigue. But the Resistance was interesting. Basically, the players are split into spies and there's the Resistance and there's like the bad corporation or the double agents or something. And you go on these missions, and the missions are very simple in that the players nominate 2 people to go on the mission. Then the people on the mission have cards of like success and fail, and they play one secretly. And if there's 2 successes, the mission is a success. If there's at least 1 fail, the mission fails. And the Resistance wins when you get a certain amount of successes, and the other team wins if you get a certain number of fails. So you send 2 people out. Let's say they both play success. Then moving on, do you start to trust them? Like, hey, let's send them on another mission.
So it's literally like you play success. There's not like a condition you have to meet to
there's nothing
to
like
create a success.
right. You just do it. You just make it happen. So if two people play success, it's like, okay, are those guys clear? Or what if that's what they want us to think? And that's the whole game. Is like, okay, let's send them back out. And then suddenly there's a fail in the pile of two. It's like, whoa, who is it?
So this is just played around a table. It's not one where
it's just played around a table. There is like
a meta or a mega game where you walk around and
I don't know how big you can get it, but no, it's just usually around a table. And yeah, and I think I played it very early in my board gaming hobby, and I think just seeing people, it's the kind of game that kind of busts a lot of people out of their shell, or like seeing relatively quiet people like super confident with lying to your face is just so hilarious. That I think it's
you
one of
never
those.
Look at them the same.
That's true, but it's also one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, okay, gaming can be like something more in the way of like pushing your boundaries or pushing you to get out of your comfort zone. Kind of just be silly, even though you might. It just gives you an excuse to be silly or an excuse to do things you might not normally do. So, yeah, that one was really important to me. So that's the Resistance.
Should we be worried if the camera turned off?
It turned off. I noticed the camera turned off. But I was thinking that we're not like moving that much. So I think I might just post the video part. And then when it cuts out, I think I just post the rest of it as audio. If that sounds fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Or I mean, you probably don't even have to post the video. Yeah. Or it could just be like.
I think it'll live on YouTube, but we'll catch people with the video for the first however 20 minutes or whatever that was going, and then it'll switch.
You could just do like a Vine of us, like.
Just
for half an hour. Just like my mouth moves and then your mouth moves and then my mouth moves.
Perfect. Okay, number 2.
Cool. Yeah.
We should play that one. That one's small enough. And Werewolf. We should play that.
I have very little experience with like more social games like that.
Yeah.
Definitely most of my tabletop experience is with more strategic and or luck-based stuff. But yeah, very little social games. My number 2, you already mentioned, is Final Fantasy VII.
Oh man.
Which is definitely like, I'm not embarrassed, but I know it's probably like on a lot of people's lists. But I will admit, I went back and played it on the Switch, and there was like a speed up feature, so you can like play the whole thing, which was like, it was awesome because I was able to actually like experience the whole thing.
Yeah.
In like 20 hours versus like 80.
Yeah.
Because you can speed up all the grinding, and I actually went and like beat the weapons, which like I'd never done back in the day. But I think they're definitely. I believe Might and Magic 7 and Pokemon came first, but I think FF7 might have been my first JRPG. And I don't even really like JRPGs that much anymore. But I think for me then, like the idea of just playing a video game for the story, that was the first time it was actually like a game was a storytelling medium for me. And I know a lot of other games before that existed. We didn't have a Super Nintendo, and I actually never owned a PlayStation 1 either, which I think were like the 2 best systems ever for RPGs, according to a lot of old school gamers. But I just never played a game and appreciated it for the storytelling before. And, going back now, like I see how bad the dialogue was. I see kind of a lot of, I could poke a lot of holes in the game now. that I couldn't when I was 12 or 13 whenever I played it. But I think still there's something about that feeling of getting into a game and just appreciating it for the story that, like, I'm so jaded now that I see like the intro to a game and it's like, in the third age of so and so world, the darkness came back, and my eyes glaze over. I'm like, this, I've seen this so many times by now. And I think there's something about that setting. And FF6 is the same way. I think it is just slightly harder to go back to because it's pixelated and it's all pixel sprites. But something about this, like, half technology, half magic world, that's still, I think, pretty unique. But at that time, I'd like definitely never seen. I'd seen like the sword and sorcery, like fantasy type stuff, and I'd seen sci-fi. I was already huge into Star Wars, but like the idea of mixing the two and wrapping it into a pretty unique story, definitely like hit me pretty hard. And like I was very into JRPGs for a very long time, probably because of that game.
Who's your favorite character?
In FF7? Man, so looking back, like some of the characters are pretty Barrett's pretty problematic. but actually, that was like one of the hardest parts of playing the remake too. Is like they barely updated Barrett.
Oh, okay.
He is mostly still just a one-liner action character from the 80s with a gun on his arm, which was pretty disappointing. I think my favorite character was Cloud. I wish they would have developed some of the other characters more.
Mm-hmm. I feel like when I was younger, I thought Cloud was so cool, and I haven't played it again for a long time, and I haven't played the remake, but I watched some people start playing it. And it just seems like he's way more whiny than I remembered. I think maybe just because I was a kid, I was like, oh, he's all stoic and cool guy.
He definitely is trying to be
he's kind of whiny.
He's a little whiny.
That's funny, but his sword is cool, so that's pretty cool.
Sword was cool. Actually, I liked the characters much better. I felt like they tried much harder in FF8. FF8's like on like the bottom of most people's lists of Final Fantasies, but I actually love it for the story almost more, other than it came second.
Sure.
For me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I didn't love. Definitely not Kate Sith. But I felt like most of the characters were just kind of one note, very two-dimensional.
Yeah.
But
cool. That's a good choice. Okay, number one. My number one is a game I still have a fondness for, but my regular game group has banned it from play.
Oh, no.
A few of them really dislike it.
Monopoly.
It is not Monopoly. I don't think I ever, even as a little kid, I never
likes Monopoly.
Found the appeal. But yeah, it is Settlers of Catan, which I guess is called Catan now. Settlers of Catan.
Was it your gateway?
It was. There was a teacher in high school that I didn't have any classes with, actually. But he was playing Catan after school on one of the days. I can't remember. I don't know if it was called like Catan Club or something. I think he was just playing it with some students. But yeah, high school, everyone was playing Catan. And I think there are some like novelties in it that I'm like used to now seeing, or just because we interface with the hobby so much, we can like talk about them with the right words, like like we can name the mechanics and stuff. But back then, it was so interesting just to have a game that didn't have like roll and move. And it's like, wait, okay, what do you mean we don't like move our pieces around? We like build stuff. That was so like
Yeah, and
that.
the only piece you move is the bad guy, right?
Right. So that part, and then the trading was so novel. Like it's adding like that social aspect. It adds that like gamifying the banter around the table, and that was so interesting. Kind of mean too. You can kind of take advantage of newer players sometimes, and yeah, and honestly, seeing the pips on the numbers of the tiles that showcase like the probability of that number coming up, and just having that in a game like where you have to consider that was really, really interesting to me. And just even in the rules explanation, someone saying, hey, 7's going to come up the most, that's how you move the robber. I was like, oh yeah, I guess it would come up the most, but I never really gave thought to that as far as like the probability of 2 dice. So yeah, played many hours of Catan. I don't play it anymore, though. I think I would play it again. I think I still like it. But nothing like that first year of high school of us playing it that was super special. So
I'll play with
that's
you.
my choice. All right, let's play.
I have an expansion I've still never played.
Let's go.
So.
Yeah, I really like. We played with Seafarers, which changes the board up. It really, I think, messes with the balance of the game. Like I feel like the purists probably want the perfect.
I have the
hexagon
knights,
or whatever.
Is it the knights?
Yeah,
and
cities and knights.
Yeah,
and then that one comes with like a flip book.
Yep.
It adds a lot of complexity to the game. Yeah, I like those two.
I think it was my gateway also. And also, I think the thing that stuck out to me was like realizing that the game had multiple ways to win. Like it wasn't asymmetric in that everyone had the same tools, but I guess it was kind of more asymmetrical than something like Monopoly, because at least Monopoly you're all starting in the same place, but yeah. Catan you're starting with different resources around you. And then like, I mean, from that like very first move you can decide like, oh, my best bet's probably like building the longest road based on the resources that are around me, or my best bet is doing this.
Yeah,
I think that was one of the things that stuck out to me from a game design perspective right away with Catan. It was like, oh wow, like you don't even have to play the game. Like you could just try to build roads and you could win that way. Or you could try to get the army card, like the other points cards, and win that way. And yeah, it's kind of banned in my family mostly because of my dad.
Yeah.
And it actually is kind of funny. Like we lost one of the roads, a red piece of road, and he like went off. And I've probably talked to you about playing games with my dad before, but yeah, he felt like he was so cheated because he only had 14 pieces of road instead of 15. So I definitely had to make another piece of road the next time we played it. But yeah, my dad's one of those people that like when he plays a game, like he wants to win it versus like I definitely like, it's fun winning games, but I feel like I just like to figure out the mechanics. And I feel like once you figure out the mechanics, it's easier to win. But I feel like it's always the fun part, is figuring out like how they designed it and how they expected you to win, and how close those two align. I feel like is pretty cool. Well, you guessed my number one.
I did guess your number one. Share it with the people.
It's definitely Dungeons and Dragons. And I still remember we were on a bus to a field trip, and there was a guy that was on the seat in front of us or behind us, and like a couple of my buddy, he was like a friend of a friend that I'd never really hung out with before, and I don't have no idea why he brought D&D on this trip, but he did, because we hadn't like premeditated playing on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know what he was gonna do if like everyone just said no. Like, was he just gonna carry his D&D stuff on the trip and feel bad that no one would play it? But I definitely was gripped from like day one, and I still remember that we played without a board, without any minis. It was just kind of realm of the imagination. But I remember he must have either been a very good DM or I was just very easy to please. But I remember like feeling so immersed from like the very beginning, and understand and like wanting to play, giving a crap about my character. I mean, it was super unbalanced. We were all like 12 and 13. So I think like we only played a few sessions together. Within a couple sessions, I had like a follower. There's a follower system back in AD&D. But I had like a way overpowered follower just based on a die roll. Like I literally think it was like, I'm trying to remember if it was like a Pegasus or if I literally had like a Titan. There's a way to get like a giant as like a follower.
Okay.
But it was all based on being a paladin and having leadership. And AD&D was it wasn't super unbalanced, but on paper, the pen and paper version was a little unbalanced. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there was any other tabletop game I've played since then that really like I just wanted to go back to immediately. I mean, that's the thing. I still play D&D today, and it's like a session ends, and that's when I'm like most motivated to like start working on the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's like then like real life takes over, and it's like harder to convince myself to work on the next session. But there's like just something about the idea of taking what I love about board games and video games, the system that's designed, and then mixing it with kind of like infinite potential, and then also like taking it from one session to the next, like this idea of growth, of continuity that I love. And I really, we've talked about this. I don't even like I could do without role playing.
Yeah.
There's not like I don't love like playing the characters per se, but I do love about D&D the freedom of choice. That there's kind of this scenario that you create, and it doesn't necessarily have to be conquered with role playing, but if you introduce an obstacle to your players and they come up with a really creative solution to get around the obstacle, like there's sometimes like it's really awesome when you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that, but that's really smart. And it's almost like, okay, like, yeah, you pass the obstacle. Like you reward people for creativity, even if it's not like role-playing creativity. I feel like that's my favorite part about the game is that, you could reward somebody for wanting to play the character a very specific way and getting into the game world just as much as you could reward somebody for like thinking of a creative way to like get past a locked door, or deal with a certain group of enemies, or it's kind of it's interesting because you play a game like BioShock or like Deus Ex, and like they've very like hard coded. There's a guns blazing route straight through the middle, or there's like this side route where you can sneak around, mm-hmm. or there's this route where you use your whatever technological know-how to like rig something. It's like you get to choose puzzle or stealth or fighting. And the incredible thing about D&D is like those routes are there, but sometimes there's a route that like you don't even foresee. Mm-hmm. And you make a dumb mistake and describe like a bucket in the corner of the room, or you make a really like conscious decision about describing something, and the players like key in on the exact wrong thing, like the bucket in the room, or they like totally ignore the thing that's really obvious, but then they end up having to make decisions just based on what you give them. And it's awesome because it's like every encounter is like a semi-blank sheet of paper. It's like you're getting a connect the dots with like only 3 dots present. And so it's just as exciting for them to like create the entire picture as it is for them to like make something crazy out of the 3 dots you give them. So
awesome.
Play D&D, kids.
I think I need to play more. We should.
I think.
And for people who don't know, Andrew and I don't really play a lot of games together. Even though we both like games separately, we just happen to I don't know. We have our own groups, which is good. But yeah, I need to play more D&D, and Andrew needs to play Fog of Love with me. That's I think what has to happen.
I think you're right. I feel like you need to try DMing.
Yeah, I've never DM'd. Oh no, I have DM'd for I have GM'd for for a Dragon Age, which was much simpler, which I think was less intimidating. I don't really remember that much from the session, so I don't know if I did a great job or anything. But yes, I need to DM some D&D. I think my intimidation is I see like everything, and I don't know how to prioritize. Like, what do I need to really know, and what can I like is like relatively acceptable for me to look up during the game or stuff like that. So yeah, I need a crash course, I think.
So my mind would be blown if you were looking up rules during a game. I've never had a player do that. I mean, like in a good way. I'd be like, oh my gosh, he wants to learn the rules. I have to invite this guy back. Yeah, I think that's something I've learned the more I do it, is like the rules are actually more important for the DM than they are for the players. And I'd say rules are even more important for beginner DMs, because it's unfortunate because it is still a very lengthy set of rules, but it's really just to like give you an idea of what a balanced system is. And then when you learn, how that works, then you know what to throw at your characters, how to change the balance. I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's probably some DMs out there who really just do it to like mess with, like they're a little masochistic and try to mess with their players. But I think most good DMs are out there just to like help other people have fun. And like I said, for me, it's like there's a value in like seeing how they react. And sometimes it's very frustrating because you create this thing that you think is obvious and very cool, and they just bypass it entirely, or they experience it in a way that you like really have to throw everything out that you planned and just totally ad lib. And that's the part of D&D that I actually don't like, just because it's very hard and exhausting to like be playing like ad lib for 3 hours or 4 hours. It's like you're exhausted at the end of ad libbing that long. And so it's much nicer when I can like have stuff prepared and they end up following the arc. But I'd say you need to play more. And I definitely think, I don't know, maybe you'd like it more if there was less role playing involved, or maybe you'd like it less, but
yeah.
I think it's all about the group you're with too.
Yeah, it seems like there's tons of style choices as far as how you run your games.
I feel like one of the advents of like D&D live plays is that they're almost all about the role playing too, because it's not fun to watch. Like it's not as fun to watch like 3 hours of somebody playing a strategy game, basically.
Yeah. But then also we've discussed this before, where I don't know Like for me, in the limited D&D I've played, I felt bogged down in the combat. I think not to I think there are ways that I've seen that are not like that. So I think it just may be a style thing. But when it comes to board games, I'm super happy to like min max the perfect move in Gloomhaven or something like that, and just like get super bogged down because it feels like I think it might have to do with like a board game you can win, or there's like ways to get better, whereas D&D is not really the goal to like win something. So I don't know if I just like have a weird switch in my head that flips for that, but yes, I need to play more for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely like no win condition. I mean, I guess if you play a one shot and you survive
you don't
the
die.
one
Yeah.
shot, you won.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's not like it's definitely not as regimented as something like Gloomhaven, where there's like a definite end to each scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from my experience, there's certain encounters where my party definitely feels like they're pooing their pants a little bit, like worried about what they're going to do, if they're going to survive, and then at the end of it, they feel accomplished, and
For sure. Yeah.
Oh, like I had to use half my resources just to survive that battle, but we did it. And it's been interesting playing the little solo campaign on the side because they're very low level characters, and I created this DMPC, which is like just basically a player character that I was controlling, and I was super excited to see how it played, and then it died in like 2 rounds of combat. Like, no joke, like went unconscious and then failed the death saving throw, and I was like, oh well, that was that. So
yeah. Can you put like one shot player characters in? Like, can you have your party meet me and I just play for a session?
Yeah, I mean, they've done that on Critical Role. It's pretty. I mean, depending on where you are in a campaign, it's sometimes very easy to drop someone in, drop somebody out.
Okay, so if you see an opportunity, I'm happy to. And don't tell them. I'll just hop on the call.
Hop on the call.
I'll be in full costume if you need me to. Yeah. We can make that happen, I think.
That sounds fun.
Okay. Yeah. Keep it in mind. Cool. Okay. So recap. My top 3 were Fog of Love, The Resistance, and Settlers of Catan. And your 3 were Might and Magic 7
/ EverQuest,
Final Fantasy 7, and D&D.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't remember where I got that topic from. There's nothing left on that sentence. I really don't remember. I think I saw it somewhere. If I stole that from another podcast or something, let me know. Yeah. I actually was watching Shelfside. We sponsored a review from Shelfside, these YouTubers. And they had a live Q&A because they hit 1 million views across all videos. So big congrats to them. But they were doing a Q&A, and I asked them the same question. What if they could do the time travel thing? And they picked, they had 2 main ones. The first one was Mansions of Madness, which is kind of, I've never played Mansions of Madness.
It's like on my list of games I want to play.
Yeah. From what I can tell, it seems like a better version of Eldritch Horror, and a big reason is it's like app driven. Like there's a companion app that helps facilitate the gameplay. So that was one. They said that it's kind of more commonplace now to have apps facilitate board games, but back then it was pretty novel. So I think they really were impressed by that. And then the other one is a kind of legendary game, Battlestar Galactica. And BSG is interesting because I think just like the Resistance, there's a time in the game when certain players get revealed, or they learn that they're Cylons.
I was just about to ask if that's one of the mechanics.
It's one of the mechanics, but unlike Resistance, where you know from the beginning, you like turn or like you learn later. Is from what I can tell. So you have to try to decide like, is this person still like helping us, or are they making actions that seem kind of weird?
That's what turned me off of the TV show.
You can't trust anything.
After the second main character turned out to be a Cylon, I was like, nope. Everyone's a Cylon now.
Spoilers on the...
Yeah, sorry. Spoilers on Battlestar Galactica, by the way. Everyone's a Cylon, probably. I haven't watched the whole thing.
I also haven't watched the whole thing.
I hate that mechanic and storytelling.
There's one part... I did not get far in Battlestar Galactica.
Season 1's great. But yeah, it was like... I don't know.
I think I need to watch more. There was a part where I really don't remember the context, but there's a part where there's like a flying creature and one of the humans like is inside of it and controls it just by like pulling on its tonsils and stuff. Is this BSG? You know, do you know what I'm talking about?
It sounds like Dune.
No.
I mean, they weren't inside of the sandworms, but they're like on top of it and they control it.
No, it was like I don't know remember what it was. If I find a picture of
whatever it is, they ripped it out from Dune.
It was like no, it was like a pterodactyl. Like imagine a pterodactyl size.
Yeah.
But you were inside of it and you could like control it by like pulling on its tonsils. I think that's a part of BSG. If it's not, no one will understand the past 2 minutes of the podcast. But I'm gonna look that up. I'm pretty sure that's BSG, and I'm pretty sure that's why I fell off. Hopefully now I could just let it go and try again. But yeah. Okay. So if you could go back in time to the viewers, please let us know what games you would go back and play for the first time. I think it's an interesting question because it's different than what's your favorite game. It's about that first experience.
About the experience, that you haven't felt since, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna finish off with just 3 questions. We are a coffee company. We're not just playing games all day, though. Maybe one day we could get. But coffee for game night. We have always, or for a long time, Andrew and I have loved coffee. We think that there's a lot of ways to interact with coffee, but one of the best ways is to treat it as like something kind of special and use it as a tool to bring people together. And we kind of learned that was kind of what we do with games as well. So, we are a coffee company for game night. We're brand new. We're a few months in to being open, even though it's been like much longer planning time. But that's going to lead into the first question. We got a question from Hillary on Facebook. How did you get into coffee yourselves? I guess I can start. I became a barista for a local coffee company here in Houston. It was interesting to me because it was a nonprofit coffee shop. So they were combining the coffee world with raising awareness and money and stuff like that. But mostly I kind of went into it like I just need some cash. Like I was like
in between job.
Yeah, I was just trying to do, this seems like a fun job. I wanted a job where I could like put in a little extra and try to like earn tips and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, let's do this. And I really got bit by the coffee. I think it was kind of irrational too, because like I was working the bar and it was like, I didn't have to get as nerdy about coffee as I did. But I don't know if it's just my personality that I just wanted to learn more or what, but suddenly I just wanted to taste tons of coffee. I wanted to buy all the gear and maybe, I have a kind of like hyperfixation thing on hobbies and stuff like that too. So, yeah, just learning as much as I could, meeting people in coffee. Yeah. Plus, I mean, it was in my early 20s back then, and almost all of the staff was in our early 20s. It felt fun. It felt like it's like a bunch of kids running a business in a weird way.
I feel like the baristas have way more fun than we do sometimes. But they think we're having way more fun.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But I went from there to Boomtown Coffee, which is, if you don't know,
I've heard of Boomtown.
Boomtown Coffee is a sister company of Many Worlds. So we utilize. I mean, we're both part of Boomtown and Many Worlds.
Yeah, we end up sharing a lot of resources. Yeah. We roast in the same space.
Yeah.
But Boomtown is pretty much only brick and mortar, and Many Worlds only exists on the internet.
Yeah. So Boomtown is in Houston. They were actually the providers of coffee for the cafe that I was working at. And I kind of weaseled my way in. They used to have these, I guess I keep saying they, but it's we as well. Just for the camera. We used to have these cuppings, which is like a coffee tasting. And cuppings can be for a lot of different reasons. They can be for tasting samples that producers give the roasters. It can be for quality control or just to sharpen the tasting skill of the staff, stuff like that. So Boomtown invited us to come on Fridays, and I don't think they expected me to come as much as I did. I just was like trying to come every Friday. And when it was time to move on from the last job, I was like, hey guys, I really want to work here. And that's what happened. Started doing marketing for Boomtown, and that's when I met Andrew.
That's me.
Yeah. How did you get into coffee?
Yeah, I took like the back door into coffee. My background was in architecture, and while being part of a large architectural practice, I was doing some graphic design just as part of the job and also on the side. And yeah, when Boomtown got to a point where it knew it needed a fair amount of design done, both architectural and graphic, packaging design, website design, I think they basically offered me a full-time position to do those things. And that's when I came on board. I said goodbye to my architecture career, and then came here and redesigned the shop and redesigned our packaging, did a little rebrand, built our first functioning, we had a website previously, but I built the first functioning e-commerce version of the website. And then just as time went on, I got more entrenched, in the business side of Boomtown, which also meant more entrenched in the world of coffee. I say I took the back door because, my introduction to coffee was basically like rewriting flavor notes and stuff on labels without fully understanding what anything was about. I definitely remember even just getting all the information about producer and origin and processing method and roast level, having a total misunderstanding of what the actual importance or meaning of all those things were. And so it's kind of funny because I was learning about the importance and meaning of all those things without actually tasting the coffee for a while.
Yeah.
And then, I honestly, I would say I didn't drink coffee that often before coming to Boomtown.
I did not drink I did not like coffee when I started.
I think that's kind of the funny thing about because I guess most of the coffee I had was Starbucks or something similar, like Seattle's Best. Or I think that's kind of a funny misconception that a lot of people have. It's like, oh, like this is the best. This must be the best coffee. It's Starbucks. It's everywhere. And if you don't like it, like that's most people's perception of coffee. Or if you do like it, you think that's what coffee's supposed to taste like. Yeah, that's for me. It was like I would drink Starbucks and just kind of feel awful afterwards. Every time. And then I finally like started drinking different types of beverages at Boomtown and finally realized like that I liked it and knew how I had to drink it to not feel like crap afterwards, which
yeah, it took me a while. I remember the first time I had an espresso. I could not believe that people liked it. I could not believe it. Or I remember we were training, and my training manager was like showing us, oh, this is what a bad one tastes like, and this is what a good one tastes like. And I was like, the good one. What are you talking about? These are both horrible. Now I honestly, we make so much. We work at a roaster. Our offices are shared with our roasting facility. So we make so many pour overs now. So we drink plenty of black coffee. But now when I go to a shop, I almost always want, especially, I don't go to a lot of shops unless I'm traveling. And now I almost always want an espresso just because it feels like more special. And I kind of like, you can't really hide on espresso. It kind of showcases the shop.
You get to judge people.
Well, I try not to judge too hard because, it is a fickle, it's pretty hard to make espresso. It's like both easy and hard. But if I like order an espresso and it's like not my favorite, I think I try to have some grace with them because I remember being a barista and
it's like your Johnny Depp's character in Once Upon a Time in Mexico. And you're going to every coffee shop and you order the same thing, and you're just waiting to be, not that you're going to go shoot the chef afterwards, but like you're waiting for like the one magical.
When it happens, it's so magical.
So yeah.
I think when it's not great, I'm like, okay, no problem. But when it's amazing, I can like remember them. I remember the first time I went to Expo. There's like a specialty coffee expo every year. And we went to Seattle, and there's a La Marzocco Café there, and they have like rotating roasters and even like rotating staff. And during Expo, there was a Tim Wendelboe coffee, which is like the Nordic style. I can't remember which country Tim Wendelboe's at, but yeah,
I want to say he's Dutch, but I don't know.
Okay,
for sure.
We will post a link to Tim Wendelboe in the description. But I remember drinking the espresso, and I just like couldn't forget it. I was like freaking out. I don't think other people were having the same experience. Well, I'm sure there were, but I like wanted to talk to everybody. It's like, did you taste this? It's like, yeah, this is a coffee shop. But yeah, when it's amazing, I really, it's pretty special. So yeah, that's how we got into coffee. He
might be Norse. Sorry. Google.
But yeah, so we have been with Boomtown for a long while, and then Many Worlds it's the newest thing, and we're having fun. I remember I don't know if you remember this, but the first time I got hired, when I got hired at Boomtown, you took me to the honeymoon, which is like, or what we used to call the downtown location of Boomtown, and
it probably was the honeymoon when you were hired.
I can't remember. I think you're right. You're right. But we had lunch and we were talking, and you were telling me about the company and training a bit. And then we were driving back here, and I think somebody mentioned video games. And I think I was kind of being shy. It's like, I don't think I want this like my new boss to be like,
I
oh, this
wanna wear
kid's
my
like
heart on my
addicted to
sleeve,
video games. But uh yeah, I feel like you kind of lit up when it came out. And then over time we talked about it more, and then it was like, oh, we both really like them, both like games and tabletop stuff too. A lot of weird pieces fell to make Many Worlds, but
That's true.
we're here now, so it's fun. Cool. Question 2.
That was a very long.
That was a long question.
Answer.
Yeah.
To a very short question.
Yeah. Question is from James. His Instagram is Roman's Mini Forge. I see you, James, painting your minis. That's super cool. I also love painting minis. You know, actually, I've been thinking about it. I don't think I like painting minis. But I love playing with painted minis.
You love when they're done.
I love when they're done.
I think that's my problem too.
And I go into various states of it's worth it to paint them, to get them done and not. I've been on a bit of a streak of not painting, but it's also because I moved and my paint is in a box and I'm in a bit of a, yeah. Anyways,
I think my problem is anytime I start a project like that, I think I have an amount of time in my head, and then when I get like 2 times past that amount of time that I had in my head, it's like I just can't fathom going any longer. And so I rarely finish like artistic projects.
Okay, that wasn't his question, or he wasn't related to minis. I just saw that his username was Roman's Mini Forge, and I was like, oh, let's check out your minis. His question: after ordering a bag for myself, what is your favorite way to make your Great Old One coffee? Great Old One, that's our dark roast. You know, I think when I was more when I was a barista, I was really interested in trying tons of different brewing methods per coffee, but I honestly make mostly like 95% of the coffee I drink is just through my pour over setup, which is just a origami brewer. We can add a link to that in the description as well. It's just a pour over device. As far as like choosing a brewing method for a specific coffee, I think the biggest thing you can control as far as like making a difference with how that specific coffee is going to taste is choosing pour overs based on their filters. And the most extremes on those are going to be a Chemex and a French press. So a Chemex has a really, really thick filter. So usually it's what I choose for more delicate coffees to get more of the nuanced flavor. If you are looking for dark roast coffee like Great Old One, if that implies that you really like super bold, super rich coffee, then the way you're going to get the most rich coffee is through a French press. So if that's what you're looking for, that's what I would recommend. The reason that is because a French press doesn't have a paper filter. It's a mesh filter. And it actually is going to let some sediment from the coffee grounds into your cup. Some people don't like that, and that's fair. But some people do. We try not to be too like derogatory with the term sludge. It can get a little sludgy, and you can like that or not. That's totally fair.
Coffee stew.
Yeah, and if you are looking for something really, really robust, that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, my answer is easier. If somebody gifted, like Great Old One or not, if somebody gifted me with a darker roast coffee, I would probably make lattes with it.
Yeah, that's a great.
I'd probably definitely pull it with espresso and add some oat milk. But if you don't have a way to make espresso at home, I definitely would go with either of Chris's recommendations. Or the other thing that's interesting with dark roasts is cold brew.
I was just from you saying that, I was like, oh, I should mention cold brew too.
Yeah, because I think especially if you like kind of chocolatey flavors in your coffee, but you don't necessarily like what I'll just call the roastiness of a darker brew. Cold brew is awesome because it kind of pulls out a lot more of the sweetness from the beans. So yeah, I think definitely you can make cold brew with any coffee and end up with something good most of the time. But dark roast, I think it's always surprising, I think, to take a dark roasted coffee and cold brew it and see what comes out.
For sure. Okay, last question. Last question is from Kaylin, my wife, on Facebook. Why does decaf sometimes taste worse than caffeinated? She made sure to say not Electric Sheep, but others. Electric Sheep is our decaf. She's looking out.
Electric Sheep has fooled some people also. Not from like getting the caffeine jitters, but just when they taste it, they don't believe that it's decaf for sure.
Yeah. So the question, why does decaf sometimes taste worse? To my understanding, there's no like varietal of coffee, or there's no way to genetically modify coffee to grow decaffeinated. It's always a process that occurs after growing. It's like a third-party process. So no matter what you do,
process too. Like after you dry the bean and get the bean extracted from the cherry.
Yeah. So especially in like the specialty world, we're like really chasing for as honest of a coffee that we can make. Like whatever the producers are trying to achieve, we're trying to showcase it in the best light. So, with decaf, no matter how much care there is into it, you are like altering the bean. We don't do the decaffeination process here at the roastery, and I don't think most roasteries do. That usually happens at facilities that are specially made to do that. I think the most popular way in the specialty world is called Swiss water process, and that's a method that uses a combination of using hot water with green coffee and filters to take out the caffeine molecules that get pulled out, and then they use that saturated water to do the process again and not take in the flavor compounds as well.
I mean, I think the most basic concept with decaf is to understand that caffeine is a crystal in its most natural form, and it's soluble just like salt or sugar. And so to decaffeinate coffee, you need a solvent, which is normally either alcohol or water or some other chemical. But the problem is, no matter what you use as a solvent, there's other things being pulled out of the coffee bean other than the caffeine. So Swiss water that Chris was describing, it pulls out the caffeine very gently, which is great, but it also, because it's water, it pulls out flavor compounds. And so they push the solute through a filter, which somehow blocks the caffeine molecules but allows flavor compounds to pass through. And then what they end up having to do is add the flavor back in on the back end after they've removed the caffeine. What's different about the Electric Sheep is they actually use ethyl acetate, which is an ethanol-based compound, to just extract as little as possible, just extract the alcohol. And then because it is an alcohol derivative, but also you don't really need much heat at all to dry out the beans because the alcohol evaporates more easily. So it's really it's a lot of science just to get caffeine out of the bean. And it's really sad because I feel like a lot goes into that process, and you almost always end up with beans that don't quite taste as good. But I think the ethyl acetate, or sugarcane process that Electric Sheep goes through, I think it's really interesting because it still tastes like really good coffee.
I think, I think before like it's becoming more popular the past few years. I think the first time I heard of sugarcane or EA processed ethyl acetate processed decaf was from Onyx, And, Onyx is a roaster in the United States that wins a lot of competitions. And, once they put their stamp on it, I think I was like, I need to like taste that or try to understand. Swiss water has been so good for so long that I'm like, okay, I just need to try that. And then when it came to sourcing for Many Worlds, we tasted so many coffees to land where we were. And yeah, I'm pretty convinced it's pretty special.
We might also just have the best sugarcane decaf out there.
I think it might be the same as I see the same farm on, or the same producer as the EA. The Electric Sheep is from the Valle del Cauca in Colombia.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that from like Black and White Roasters, which is the Lem Butler. I don't know. I'm getting nerdy about. There's like coffee celebrities too. But yeah, I've been seeing it, and once the roasters are really good at their jobs at tasting coffees and picking the best stuff. So the proof is in them, and then I taste it, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome.
That's why, Kaylin.
That's why
that decaf tastes different.
Yeah, because they got to do stuff to it.
Yeah, I would say if you are a decaf drinker, you don't have to drink Electric Sheep, but definitely find a especially coffee roaster near you. Definitely don't drink decaf that isn't specialty because you're cheating yourself.
I think it'll just taste so different than coffee that.
Oh yeah.
I think I'd rather just drink hot cocoa or tea.
I'd rather drink tea for sure.
If you really want a coffee flavor, it's worth it to find the roasters that are like proud of their decafs. Yeah, because otherwise, I think, or find an herbal tea.
Cool.
Okay, that's all we had on the list.
Chris, I don't know if anybody is going to listen to this till the end, but if anybody's still with us, it's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
This is much longer than I expected it to go.
It's long. I think we are learning a lot about content production, so I feel like the folks are bearing with us. I feel like the people that watch, you guys rock. This is
maybe we'll bookmark it so you can just skip right to the question you want to hear answering.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll definitely put the timestamps below. Yeah, so there's gonna be episode 1 of the Many Worlds Tavern podcast. We will have a way for you. Actually, if you have a question that you want answered on the podcast, coffee question, game question, questions about Andrew. I don't know why I like pause there. It sounded like questions about Andrew. That's it. Or me. Whatever. Even if it's not coffee or game related, please send your questions to Chris, CHRIS, at ManyWorldsTavern.com. If it's good, we'll answer it. If it's bad, we won't.
We still might answer it if it's a bad question.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah. Okay. Is that it?
I think that's it.
That's it. See ya.
See y'all next time.